The Oxford Dawn. The rain in Oxford does not fall. It mists. It clings to the limestone of the colleges, turning the golden stone a deep, melancholic honey color. It slicks the cobblestones of Radcliffe Square and dampens the wool coats of students hurrying to tutorials. For Arthur Penhaligon, professor of medieval history at St. Jude's College, this dampness was not an inconvenience. It was a baptism. Every morning, as he walked from his terraced house in Jericho to the college gates, the English rain washed away a little more of the dust of the steppe that still coated his soul. Even after 30 years, Arthur was 62. He wore tweed jackets with leather patches on the elbows, not because it was a cliché, but because he genuinely loved the durability of the fabric. He smoked a pipe, preferring a blend of Latakia and Virginia. He could debate the succession crisis of 1066 for 3 hours without notes. He was a fixture, a piece of the furniture, as essential to the college as the portrait of the founder in the dining hall. He was also Colonel Yuri Andreevich Volkov of the KGB. Or he had been. He wasn't sure if Yuri still existed. Yuri was a ghost who lived in the mirror while Arthur shaved. Arthur was the man who lived the rest of the day. The activation signal came on a Tuesday in November, hidden in the Times crossword puzzle. It was innocuous to anyone else. 14. A cross. A winter flower in the east. 9 letters. The answer was snowdrop. 18 down. The color of the horizon at dawn. 7 letters. The answer was crimson. Snowdrop, crimson. It was the call sign for Operation Nightfall. Arthur sat in his study, the newspaper trembling in his hands. The fire in the grate crackled, a cozy, domestic sound that suddenly felt like the roaring of a distant furnace. Outside, the bells of Christ Church tolled the hour. He had waited for this moment for 3 decades. He had been planted here in 1954, a young man with perfect English and a forged biography, with orders to burrow deep, to spot talent, to cultivate the sons and daughters of the establishment who would one day run the Foreign Office, the Treasury, and the Secret Services. He had done his job. He had been the kindly mentor to ministers, the drinking companion to ambassadors. He had nudged them, subtle as a breeze, toward ideologies that favored the East, or simply noted their vices for future leverage. He had sent his reports in invisible ink on the back of academic journals. But Nightfall was different. Nightfall was the end game. It meant the Cold War was turning hot, or the Kremlin was desperate. It was a command to burn the network. He was to hand over the black ledger, the master list of every compromised individual he had groomed over 30 years, to a courier, who would then use it to shatter the British government from within. Blackmail, exposure, chaos. Arthur looked out the leaded window at the quad. Students were walking across the grass, a privilege reserved for fellows, laughing, their breath pluming in the cold air. He saw young Masterson, a brilliant physicist who played the cello. He saw Sarah Jenkins, a fierce debater who would likely be prime minister one day. They were his children, not biologically, but intellectually. He had taught them how to think. He had poured tea for them when they were heartbroken. He had corrected their grammar and celebrated their triumphs. He was supposed to destroy them. The meet was set for Friday at the Ashmolean Museum, in the Gallery of Greek Antiquities. Arthur spent the intervening days in a fugue state. He went through the motions of his life, but everything felt sharp, hyper-real, like a man walking to the gallows. He lectured on the Magna Carta on Wednesday. Liberty, he told the lecture hall, is not a gift, it is a garden. It must be tended, or the weeds of tyranny will choke it. As he spoke, he felt a fraudulence so profound it nearly choked him. He was a weed. He was the blight in the garden. On Thursday evening, he attended high-table dinner. The candlelight reflected off the silver and the polished oak. The Latin grace was spoken. The wine was poured. "You seem pensive, Arthur," the dean said, leaning over. "Trouble with the manuscript?" "Just history catching up with me." Arthur smiled wan. He looked around the table. These men and women were eccentric, sometimes petty, often arrogant. but they were free. They debated with a ferocity that was only possible in a society that didn't fear a knock on the door at midnight. He remembered Omsk. He remembered the fear. He remembered why he had joined the service to protect his country. But somewhere in the last 30 years, the definition of his country had shifted. He loved the queuing. He loved the self-deprecating humor. He loved the way the English could turn a complaint about the weather into a philosophical treatise. He loved the cricket matches he still didn't quite understand, but watched religiously. He realized, with a terrified clarity, that he was no longer pretending. The mask had eaten the face. Friday. The Ashmolean. Arthur carried a leather briefcase. Inside was the black ledger. It wasn't a physical book, but a sheaf of typed papers, coded and condensed. It contained the names of 3 MPs, a high-ranking judge, 2 nuclear scientists, and the deputy director of MI6. All of them had secrets Arthur had collected. All of them would be ruined. The British government would collapse in scandal and paralysis. He walked past the statues of Roman emperors. Stone eyes watched him. The courier was waiting by a display of amphorae. He was young, sharp-featured, wearing a raincoat that looked too new. He didn't look like an academic. He looked like a shark in a tweed suit. "Professor," the man said. He didn't offer a hand. "Mr. Smith, I presume," Arthur said. The code name was lazily generic. "You have the thesis?" the courier asked. "I do." Arthur patted the briefcase. "Good." The center is impatient. The timeline has accelerated. The courier held out his hand. "Give it to me." Arthur looked at the hand. He looked around the museum. A school group was filing past. Children in blazers staring up at the ancient pottery. They were chattering about gods and monsters. If he handed over this briefcase, the country that sheltered these children would be torn apart. The institutions he had dedicated his life to teaching would be undermined. But if he didn't, he was an old man. He had no family in Russia anymore. His parents were dead. His wife had divorced him before he left. Remarried a party official. He had nothing to go back to, but he had everything to lose here. "There is a problem," Arthur said. The courier's eyes narrowed. "What problem?" "The research is incomplete." Arthur lied. "I need another 24 hours to verify the citations." "Do not play games, old man," the courier hissed, stepping closer. "This is not a tutorial. Hand over the ledger." Arthur gripped the handle of the briefcase. He thought of the Magna Carta. "No free man shall be seized or imprisoned." "No," Arthur said. The word hung in the air, heavy and absolute. The courier looked stunned. "What did you say?" "I said no. I will not give it to you." "You are refusing a direct order from the directorate? Do you know the penalty for treason?" "Which treason?" Arthur asked softly. "I have committed treason every day for 30 years. Against England, by being here. Or against Russia, by loving it." He looked the young man in the eye. "I am not Yuri Volkov. I am Arthur Penhaligon, and I am an Englishman." The courier's hand dipped into his pocket. "A weapon? A syringe?" "Don't," Arthur said sharply. "We are in a public museum. There are cameras. There are guards. And I have taken the liberty of mailing a sealed letter to the special branch this morning. It contains only one name, yours. If I am not back in my college by 4 p.m. to take tea, they will open it." It was a bluff, a desperate, terrified bluff. The courier froze. He calculated. The KGB did not like public scenes. They did not like compromised agents. "You are a dead man," the courier whispered. "If not today, then tomorrow. We will find you." "Perhaps," Arthur said, adjusting his glasses. "But the porter at St. Jude's is very strict about visitors, and I have a lecture to prepare." Arthur turned his back. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. Every muscle in his body screamed that he was about to be shot in the spine. He walked away. He walked past the Greek heroes and the Roman gods. He walked out of the museum and into the gray, drizzling afternoon. He walked back to St. Jude's. He went to his study. He locked the door. He took the sheaf of papers from his briefcase, the black ledger, and threw it into the fireplace. He watched the flames curl the edges of the paper. He watched the names of the powerful men and women he had betrayed turn to ash. He watched the secrets of the British establishment disappear up the chimney. He poured himself a sherry. His hands were shaking so badly the crystal decanter clattered against the glass. He knew the threat was real. The center would not forgive this. He might have a week, maybe a month, a heart attack in his sleep, a car accident, a fall down the stairs. But as he sipped the sherry, he looked around his room, the books lining the walls, Gibbon, Macaulay, Bede. The smell of old paper and pipe tobacco, the view of the quad, where the shadows were lengthening. He had bought his life. He had bought his identity. He sat down at his desk. He pulled a fresh sheet of paper toward him. He had a monograph to finish on the dissolution of the monasteries. It was important work. A knock came at the door. Arthur flinched. Was it them? Already? Come in, he called out, his voice steady. The door opened. It was Masterson, the physics student. He looked distraught. Professor, I'm sorry to disturb you. It's about my thesis. I'm stuck. Arthur looked at the young man. He saw the potential, the brilliance, the future of the country he had just saved. Come in, dear boy, Arthur said, gesturing to the armchair by the fire. Close the door. The draft is terrible today. I don't know what to do, Masterson stammered. Arthur smiled. It was a genuine smile, warm and crinkled at the edges. Start at the beginning, Arthur Penhaligon said, and tell me everything. We have all the time in the world. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the ancient stones, keeping the island green.